Hello and welcome to episode 348 of the Stacey West podcast. You may not recognize me because I have not been on a show very much recently, but my name is Gary and I'm a regular host of the show. One of the irregular guests that we have on every single week is Mr. Chris Lamming, and he's here with me today. How are you?
Very irregular. Yes, no, I'm all right, thank you. I'm all right. I wasn't used to going back to work on Monday. I had a lovely time off. I had a couple of weeks off over Christmas. I'd never had that amount of time off over Christmas since I was at school. Got back to work on Monday and just forgot how everything worked. So Monday was a bit of a baptism of fire. Then kind of getting back into swinging things this week. But one constant, of course, is the Stacey West, Lincoln City and football. How are you?
I'm tired. I've just done a long run. I like the fact that you've set me up for that nicely. So obviously, regular viewers, listeners, etc., will know that I'm running the London Marathon at the end of April. My official training started on December the 30th. So I did lots of runs over Christmas. I even ran Christmas Day. Went for a run Christmas Day morning. Went for a run New Year's Eve. I've been fairly consistent. But this last week has been intervals, which for those who don't know are basically the devil. Where you run a certain pace and then for like 800 meters you have to run quicker and then you slow down, then you run quicker. So today I had a 5 mile interval, so I had to do a gentle run for a mile. That's easy, and then 5 miles at my marathon pace, then a mile a gentle run. And round near me there's no such thing as a gentle run. There's just lots of hills. The roads are iced over because I live in the middle of nowhere, so everything is sheet ice. So it was a delicate run today, and feeling a little bit jaded. I've just recorded the Real EFL podcast. We're doing this immediately after this. I'm doing the Fantasy Football League podcast, and then you're coming over to beat me at pool.
Hopefully so. That sounds like a lovely evening.
Yeah, sure it does. So we ought to get on with football because I did ask patrons for feedback, and one of our beloved patrons, and thank you very much if you are one of them, did message back and said, sometimes I get a bit bored when you're not talking about football at the beginning, which
Me
is...
too.
Yeah, well, I know you do. I mean, I quite like it. I quite like just talking to people about random stuff. But apparently we are here to talk about football. So 2 minutes, 44 seconds in, we'll talk about football. One thing that overshadowed our season last season was injuries. And this season has been no exception. Obviously, we've lost Tom Hamer relatively long term at various points. We've lost the likes of Tom Bayliss this season, Adam Jackson this season. But the one position you don't really want to lose is your goalkeeper. So lo and behold, today it's been announced that George Wickens went for a scan. He's got an injury. He's going to miss the Birmingham City game. We don't know if it is any longer term than that. That means Zach Geacock has been recalled from his loan spell at Southend. What was your initial thoughts to this news?
A bit disappointed for George, really, because he's been on some really, really good form in the last 2 or 3 matches. Has been subject from a little bit of criticism, I think, earlier in the season, but his very recent form has been nothing short of superb, really, particularly in the last couple of games. So this is a really good opportunity for him to be able to continue that good form, and comes at a bad time for him, really, but big opportunity for Zach Geacock, particularly to come in and play against his former club in Birmingham City, who gave him his league debut. So, yeah, mixed feelings, I suppose. It's good for Zach, bad for George. We don't know how long George is going to be out. And we have speculated this off camera, haven't we? So we'll maybe share some of our thoughts on that. But hopefully it's not too long. But in regards to this upcoming fixture against Birmingham City, I've got no issues with Zach Geacock playing. He did pretty well in the appearances he had earlier in the season, and by all accounts has been doing all right out at Southend. So
I don't mean to shout you down, but he's only played twice for Southend. And in one of those games, he was sent off. He lost the role of first team goalkeeper after the 2-0 defeat at Altrincham, I think on the 16th.
Are you sure about this?
Yep, I am sure about that. And then on the 23rd of November, Colin Andeng-Needy came in, and he's been the first team keeper since. And Zach Geacock's been on the bench.
Guess what I did?
What?
I read 2 as 12.
Yeah, 2 appearances.
That's schoolboy error. Yeah, so because he got his red card rescinded, didn't he? He got sent off, got his red card rescinded, but obviously didn't get back into the team. Makes total sense for him to come back anyway. Then, if he's not getting game time, because the reason for him to go out was to play. That's an amateur mistake on my part. That is, I'm very disappointed at myself. But he hasn't let us down when he played for us. I think I mentioned pre-season. I'm really impressed with his footwork, like his ball striking with both feet. So that was quite fun. I don't think it's the best goalkeeper we've got at that. So yeah, I think the overriding feeling is it's a shame for George Wickens because he's been on good form.
I think it's interesting as well that we haven't gone down the lone goalkeeper route, which of course we could have done. Had Zach remained out at Southend, we could have looked at a lone goalkeeper, potentially even played Partington with a young keeper on the bench for the Birmingham game. I mean, I think it shows that we're actually taking the Birmingham game. And when I say taking it seriously, I know that's stupid because it's FA Cup third round, but you know what I mean. It's not a game you look at and think, well, that's massively winnable. I mean, we'll talk about it later, but it does show, well, actually, let's give ourselves the best chance of winning that by bringing G-Cock back. And by bringing him back, that does actually mean that we can't then make an emergency loan because we can't now loan him out and then bring somebody else in, I don't think. I'm not sure that's how the emergency loan works. You can't give a keeper away in order to bring it back. He has to be out on loan anyway. So for me, that suggests one of two things. Either one, we have great confidence in one of Partington or G-Cock being able to stick between the sticks for a couple of months, or two, deep down, we know that Wickens' injury isn't going to keep him out for too long.
Yeah, it's difficult to know which is which. To be honest, my opinion's probably changed on this a little bit, considering I've got the whole G-Cock situation wrong, because my thought was, if he's playing regularly, bringing him back for one game, maybe is short-sighted, but would indicate that it's a bit of a stopgap until George Wickens just kind of comes back into it. But if he's not playing, then he needs to come back anyway, because he needs to go back out on loan at some point potentially and play, or of course fight for a first-team spot here. So I think it's weird, because when I thought that he's come back, my initial thought was, he'll play then. But there's no guarantee he'll play. Jimmy Partington might play, and Zach might be on the bench. So, yeah.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because it was only in the the Mickey Mouse Trophy the other week, but Partington was making some quite deliberate comments about commanding his area, coming out, helping out his defence, getting the ball away. Was it Morecambe he played against? And I thought yes. he had a decent game in that encounter. And he's really accepted, I think, as the third place keeper. We say Partington and G-Cock, but G-Cock, I think, is the one that you look at. He's gone out for loan time, whereas Partington hasn't. G-Cock's had more senior experience, particularly while at Birmingham. Partington hasn't. And yet, when an opportunity like this arises, they're stood side by side and they're dead equals. And I just wonder if it might be Jamie Partington's moment to shine.
Yeah, it's impossible to call, to be honest. We know it's not going to be George Wickens. I'm going to happily sit on the fence for this one, because I don't know which one I would prefer. I don't know which one the club would prefer in this game. It's a big game for either of them. Arguably bigger for Zach, just because the fact it's Birmingham, his old club, but a massive opportunity for Jamie if he plays. We'll have to wait and see.
Now, I might be wrong, but did Zach G-Cock not play against Birmingham in the league?
Not sure.
I might be wrong with that. He played. No, he didn't. It was Peterborough and Wigan. He must have been on the bench. So anyway, so we're going from a player who we have recalled from loan to a player who we have recalled from loan, but not one who's going to be appearing in the FA Cup this weekend against Birmingham City. I am, of course, talking about Oisin Gallagher, or Ocean Gallagher, if you're Mark Hone. Oisin has been, sorry, Mark. I actually messaged, Mark Hone and I know, kind of know him, but we've got a mutual friend. And every time I listen and Mark calls him Ocean, I message our mutual friend and say, just messaging him and telling it's Oisin, as in O and Sheen. O as in O and Sheen as in Barry Sheen. Come on. So anyway, Oisin Gallagher has been recalled from his loan spell at Peterborough Sports, where he has reportedly done very well in the National League North, and been loaned to Boston United, a team who next season will be competing in the National League North, but right now are competing in the National League. So it's a great opportunity for Oisin, and it shows us really trying now to, I think, kick his development on a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, he has by all accounts and some first-hand experience. I've got a friend who watches Peterborough Sports semi-regularly, has been really impressed with Gallagher. And Jez mentioned this a few weeks ago. I think it was just before Christmas. All time doesn't exist in that kind of festive period, does it? So I don't know exactly how long ago it was. But whenever Jez did his interview with BBC Radio Lincolnshire recently, he mentioned that the club are really pleased with Oisin's development out at Peterborough Sports and would be happy for him to stay there and continue that. But if an opportunity arises for him to step up, then it would probably be right for the player. And that says to me that he's probably outgrown the level, which is what you want to see from a player that we want to be playing regularly in League One eventually. So a step up into the National League makes total sense. Local club, again, not far away from Peterborough, really. So he's even going to be travelling pretty much the same direction, similar distance to where he was going before. And Boston's model is quite interesting in terms of their setup. So they're not a semi-professional side. They're also not fully professional. There are a lot of clubs in the National League and the National North these days are what is known as like a hybrid model. So kind of traditional semi-pro is you train a couple of evenings a week, which is what Peterborough Sports were doing. So how that would work with Oisin would be he would train with the first team with us in the daytime of the days he's not training with Boston or playing. Tuesday, Thursday evenings train with Boston, Peterborough Sports, and obviously play his games. At Boston, they train some days, but not every day. So I think Jez mentioned that Oisin will still be training with us 1 day a week, but would be with Boston the rest of the time. So I think that's a nice mix. It keeps him in and around the building, in and around the squad, allows Michael Skibola to keep an eye on his development and keep kind of close tabs on him, but gives him that slightly more professional experience as a lone player as well, playing at a level higher than he has for the first half of the season. For me, this is a win-win situation for everyone involved, providing he plays. But if he plays like he was at Peterborough Sports, then he will play in this Boston United team.
Yeah, I quite like the fact he's gone to Boston. I like it when Lincoln players go to like Gainsborough Trinity or Boston or something like that, a little bit closer. That's no disrespect to Peterborough Sports, but kind of, I don't know, maybe it's just me kind of that keeping it in Lincolnshire. Now, of course, we have had loans that have gone to Boston United, particularly Sam Long, who had a horrible time on loan at Boston United, and it had certainly set him back. And you could argue that loan spell, even after what he did at Falkirk, kind of really did hit him, really was to his detriment, I think, in terms of his Lincoln City career. So it's an interesting loan. Where he plays is going to be really interesting because we have him touted as this kind of holding midfielder, but he's come back. He's played centre half a couple of times in the EFL Trophy. I do wonder as well if we'll see him in the EFL Trophy on Tuesday night. It's Bolton Wanderers, isn't it? At our place. So I do wonder if he'll come back for that. Who knows? But it's nice, finally, I think, to see Oisin make that step up, because he was at Peterborough Sports, went to Drogheda, and you kind of thought, well, his next loan's got to be in the National League. And when he went back to Peterborough Sports, it was not underwhelming. It's kind of like, well, it's a little bit of a sidestep. And it's funny because I was having a conversation with Pete, my mate Pete, earlier, and we were talking about Louis Barry. And Louis Barry on loan at Ipswich didn't do very well, went on loan to League Two, and you think, oh, well, there's your downward trajectory. And he's kind of kicked on from that. And I do wonder if Oisin's second spell at Peterborough Sports has actually been a real catalyst. I mean, he did relatively well at Drogheda, but this second spell, and by the way, MJ Kamara as well is earning rave reviews until he broke his foot. So I still think we'll utilise that Peterborough Sports. It would be nice if Boston stayed up so that we had that that safety net in the National League as well, but it probably won't happen, will it, looking at the National League table?
No, but things changed quickly in the National League, and they've still got a lot of games to play. New manager, new players in, no transfer window as such. Obviously, there's a transfer window for the Football League, but not in National League. So it's weird. Like, I've never seen Boston as a genuine rival. Even when they was in the league, wow. I felt like they disliked us more than we disliked them, is kind of how I felt. That probably a little bit how we are with Grimsby in some ways. But I like them doing quite well, particularly like them being in the National League, because I think that's the size club they are. They're a National League size club, but also I think it just, from a Lincoln City fan's perspective, it gives us this brilliant opportunity to allow loan players to go and play at that level at a local club. So yeah, it's a bit selfish why I want Boston to do reasonably well as well, but I hope they stay up. Even if it is for purely selfish reasons. It's a win-win situation for everyone if that happens, I think, in regards to us and Boston United, and we could maybe build some closer relationships there in terms of some more loans. Maybe
you see people like you who say, I don't see Boston as a serious rival. There are lots like you. There are people who started watching in the 70s, and there are people who started watching kind of later than that. I started watching in 86, 87, but my first full season was 87, 88. And on Boxing Day, we were away at Boston, and on Easter Monday, we played them at home. And in my mind, it's like Boston's not very far away. There was a big thing over tickets. So it was a derby. So then when they did come into the league in 2002-03, albeit I think it wasn't even Evans, was it? It was the other manager. I can't think.
It was Steve Evans got them promoted and then got banned.
Yeah, and the other guy came in and then went out. But Evans made that a rivalry, and I have a soft spot for Boston because kind of my nephew lives there. My brother and etc. That's their local team, but I don't want them to be in our league. But if it was a choice between, would I want us to play Boston every week or Grimsby every week, it would be Grimsby, and Boston are a non-league club. So anyway, so we've talked about Oshin. We've recalled him. He's going to Boston. That's brilliant. Now there is a potential. There's another big story that's kind of bubbling under, and it's Pete O'Rourke on Football Insider has linked us, Mansfield and Charlton Athletic, with Sam Clucas. Now, my first red flag, and I said it on the podcast before, I'll say it again, is the rule of three. If a journalist links 3 teams with one player, the likelihood is that the story is being generated by an agent or something like that, because a journalist isn't going to have contact with 3 clubs who all go to him and say, do you know who we're after? And he goes, do you know what, I'll put that in a story. The story tends to come from somewhere else. So the rule of 3 is kind of in place here, but we are being linked with Sam Clucas, and it's a link that has been bubbling away for quite a few years now. We had Sam on the Match Day Live that I used to do with Sam Ashu, and I remember a conversation around him coming back to Lincoln there. I remember Clive Nates making a comment about one day we'll have you back at Lincoln. He's 34 years old. He's currently playing in the National League. Done a bit of research before the show because I'm not Ben, and the Oldham fans are basically saying he's more or less the best player on the pitch for them. He's got 2 assists in a recent game. He's head and shoulders above everybody else, as you would expect. Now, when I first saw this, I thought there is literally more chance of me platting Fogg. And I have got quite good at platting at the minute because the sheet that we have on our sofa has got these little tassels on. And while I'm watching a film, I'm platting with just 3 fingers, creating little plats. But Fogg is very difficult to plat. And I thought there's more chance of me doing that than assigning Sam Clucas. And then I thought about it, and I thought quite deeply about it. And I actually think this would make a huge amount of sense for several reasons. And I'll come over to you in a minute. First of all, if Ethan Rahan is potentially sold this summer, this winter, and the target that we wish to bring in is not available until the summer, a deal for Sam Clucas would help cover that area of the field. And perhaps we'd play the double sixes of Clucas and a McGrandles, a little bit of experience, a little bit of a calm head. Assuming a Rahan is not sold, Clucas comes in and plays alongside him and actually helps to keep him in check and develop him a little bit. Like, I've played in the Premier League and Sam Clucas was an exemplary professional. This is what you need. So it could actually be what we need to help round Ethan Rahan into a slightly more saleable player. So they're the 2 reasons. 3, no matter what you say, not us particularly, but there are areas of the fan base right now that have a disconnect with the team. There's quite a bit of negativity. What's the one? There is. I don't see your face, but there is. We know it. We hear it on the match day. What's the one thing that helps get that connect back? Here's the local boy. He used to work in Debenhams. He left as a wiry 19-year-old. He comes back in. Okay, it's not quite Lee Frecklington magnitude, but one of our own coming back at the end of a career where he's moved on for millions of pounds could actually instill a little bit of the feel-good factor. And finally, the 4th reason I think it would be a good signing, and I'm just going to say 2 words and then obviously say a load more after it, Tendai Darikwa. What's Tendai done when he's come in? He has been a shining beacon of experience. He's helped some of the younger lads on. There's no doubt he's put an arm around Jova Makama. You see it on the field. Tendai doesn't get booked for dissent very often at all. Tendai has been the player of the year. He won 3 Player of the Month awards. He's 32. There's absolutely no reason why we can't just look for that little bit of extra experience in Sam Clucas. If he's doing that well at Oldham and he's fit and he's raring to go and he's available at a good price, do you know what? I'm behind the signing. Over to you.
I've got so many mixed feelings on this because I was just speaking to Joe, who I sit next to at football. I've mentioned a few times where we work together, we work at the same place. So I was talking to him on my lunch break about this, and he obviously mentioned it. He actually mentioned it to me. He saw the news before I did, and I was like, take the sentimental connection away. just for a second. Take the young lad that used to work in Debenhams, never really got a chance at his local club, would love to come back. Take all that out of it, and let's look at this as a purely footballing decision. A player that, absolutely has got good experience, ex-Premier League player, but has been gradually dropping down divisions over the last couple of seasons. Now is playing his trade in the National League, albeit playing very, very well and the best player on the pitch in the National League. Would you be behind a signing for a 34-year-old in that guise? And I think that's how we've got to look at this.
Played 32 championship games last season. He was championship level last season.
I am not denying this. It isn't me saying we shouldn't sign him. This is a question I asked Joe, and I just think all of us, let's take the romance out of this a little bit firstly. And would we see someone in exactly the same situation as Sam Clucas is right now, but it's not Sam Clucas? Would we see that as a positive step for the club to take? And I just don't know if the answer is as a resounding yes as maybe I've heard a little bit. And also, this is just really weird for me because I used to play with Sam at county level, at college as well. So it's so strange. There's a few players that I've kind of similar age as, or kind of came across in my career that are kind of playing at levels. I've never no one to the level that Sam has been at. And it's always been really nice to see his success because he was always the best player on the pitch whenever I played with him. But it just feels strange because it's someone who I don't know. I haven't spoken to him since I was a teenager, but it's just weird. So I would love him to come back from a sentimental point of view. I'm not going to deny that. Of course I would. And I would hope, I'd love the story of him coming back, finishing off his career at his hometown club that he never got a real kind of crack to play at, and he helps us have a successful season. That is the fairy tale, isn't it? But I think you've got to have that reality element of it as well. Is a 34-year-old player that's playing in the National League at the moment, regardless of where he was last season.
What sort of influence could he have on the likes of Oisin Gallagher and the other young players that we have around, in that he has been a model professional? He exemplified fighting for what he wanted, being released by us, going off to the Glen Hoddle Academy, coming through Hereford, all of that. His experiences are perfect for the sort of players that we have. Some of the young players that we have want to play Championship and Premier League football, and some people don't give them a cat in hell's chance of doing that. With the greatest of respect, you look at the likes of Oisin Gallagher, or you look at the likes even of Ethan Arahan, players that are 23, 24 years old. Sam Clucas isn't just a player who's been in the Premier League who's 34, or he's been in the Championship who's 34. He epitomises what making the most of your career is all about. He epitomises what it takes to be a professional. And it's not just he was working in Debenhams, he was playing for Netland, he was released by us. He has been, every time he's got a move, he's played 56 Premier League games, by the way, and every time he got a move upwards, I was like, how the hell's that happened? And then you watch him, and he's a good footballer. And Oldham fans are still going, you know what? He's got it. He's the best player on the pitch. If he's the best player on the pitch in the National League, whether he's 24 or 34, why wouldn't he deserve a step up? And okay, if there's a little question over his fitness, we're not going to be playing Saturday, Tuesday for much longer. I'm behind it. I wasn't behind it. And do you know what? I am now. And I'm absolutely sure that it's a Pete O'Rourke fishing expedition and it ain't going to happen. It doesn't fit the model, all that sort of stuff. But something at the back of my mind just goes, do you know what? After the last couple of weeks, we need a good news story.
Yeah, we do. We do need a good news story, but I don't think fabricating one or getting our hopes up around this, or maybe convincing ourselves that this maybe is a good news story without getting all the facts and or all of the angles. And again, this isn't me saying that we shouldn't sign him. I've just said I would love us to do it, particularly for the romantic reason. Would love him to come back and be a really good player for us. I just can't see. I just can't see it. And it's not about the model. Like you mentioned, Tendai didn't fit the model, but fitted the squad right now. Michael has mentioned the desire to bring in experience, but he mentioned that primarily for the front line. But we've seen the value of having some experienced heads in the squad. So it makes sense. It's not complete kind of garbage, is it? It's not complete like, no, that just doesn't make sense. Like, there was some in the summer where you look at it and think, no, well, that's not us. We're not going to do that. Let's not even get behind it. There was some we didn't even credit with discussion on the podcast in the summer transfer window because we all just thought, well, that's clearly not going to happen. This doesn't fit into that category. I'd put it in the unlikely category. But but I don't think it's massively likely. But I would love it to work out. I like to put that on paper, but I don't think it will be the case.
Great point here. Did he only go to the conference because it was outside of the window?
Most likely so.
No, he didn't, because he was released by Rotherham, so he was a free agent, so he could have signed for a Football League club at any time.
Okay, fair enough.
I think it was more.
I was surprised. Yeah, I was surprised to see him drop down to the National League from Rotherham, I have to say. But you kind of think that's that, then, don't you? When you see that happen, you think, oh well, that's that. Not necessarily that's his level, but he's now not clinging on. That sounds really harsh, but keeping going at a professional level at a big club for as long as he can. By the way, I think I'm right in saying this. I think he's the only player in English football history to go from National League to Premier League, or Step 5 to Step 1 in consecutive seasons.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's pretty impressive, isn't it?
Did he? Was it consecutive seasons?
Hereford, then Chesterfield.
So he was Hereford in Conference Premier. He had. Let's have a look. Yeah. Then he went to the Championship. Yeah, he did. Yeah, you're right. So 2012-13, he was at Hereford. 13-14, League 2 with Mansfield. Started that season in League 2, but then moved to League 1 14-15, 15-16 Championship, 16-17 Premier League. And in the Premier League, he scored 3 goals in 41 appearances. You've redeemed yourself, haven't you, after the Zach Geacock era?
I was mortified by that.
Another bit of news that I think Football Insider have released, but this time it's only one player and this time it's only one team. So it does suggest that there may be some veracity to it. And that is an outgoing for JJ McKiernan. Now, I think the podcast last week, Rob Street, was discussed. He's gone out on loan. We weren't surprised about that. 4-year deal. It's not about getting rid. It's about development. So JJ McKiernan has been linked with a move to League One's bottom side, Burton Albion, now managed by Gary Bowyer. Really interesting. This is for me. I haven't watched a lot of Burton. I haven't seen if Bowyer's tried to reinvent them or carry on the awful job that Mark Robinson was doing there. But McKiernan possibly to Burton obviously wouldn't play against us, but it would be an opportunity for him to play regular League One football before coming back next season. Now, this hasn't been confirmed by the club in any way at all. It really is just internet chatter. But usually when O'Rourke says something is about to happen, it's because it's more or less agreed and he just gets a heads up 24 hours in advance. Same with most of the journos, to be honest. So JJ McKiernan possibly going to Burton Albion for the final 4 months of the season. What are your thoughts on that, Mr. Lemming?
Makes sense, actually, from lots of angles. Firstly, the fact that we all know that JJ needs to play games. Jez mentioned in the same interview I referenced earlier, that he's likely to go out and get games. Jez also mentioned that the most likely destination for the players listed was League 2, but there was League 1 interest as well. This could well be the League 1 interest that he was referring to. So it makes total sense. Also, something that I don't think always gets picked up on when we think of loan signings, particularly for kind of first team players that are kind of just not getting the minutes they need, not necessarily for younger players that are looking to develop really quickly, is the specific style of football that the club that they play for on loan. How similar is that to the style that we play? What skill set are they actually trying to develop by going out on loan? And since the manager changed, Burton have changed to a 3-5-2 and have had significantly less possession than they had earlier in the season. So no two teams play exactly the same. Obviously, Burton are really struggling in League One at the moment, so needed to change something. But it would indicate to me that, at least on paper, he's likely to go and play a similar role that he would be likely to play here. And that kind of adds up as well. So this one, of the stories that we've seen today, this one makes a lot more sense, to be honest, than anything else.
Yep, I agree. I quite like JJ McKiernan. Whenever I've seen him play, I think there's elements of his game that are going to be huge for us. I have heard rumours of a training ground bust up, which I think are just the sort of malicious rumours you get spread by certain supporters whenever when things aren't going particularly well. We were at training, and it's only one session, but there certainly seemed to be a relatively good spirit. But there's talk of some dissatisfaction around midfielders. We've got an awful lot of midfielders, so it's maybe just a good opportunity for JJ to go away and get some games. But I certainly wouldn't pay too much attention to the rumours that you hear, because one of the rumours that you've heard, of course, and this will wrap up Part one is that Joe Taylor was somebody that we were looking at, and I've even seen it on Twitter as recently as yesterday, despite the fact Jez has put that to bed. I've had a message from a Huddersfield Town blogger today telling me that Joe Taylor will be announced by them tomorrow and wanting some voice notes. So I think we can finally say goodbye to that rumour. Now, let me ask you a question, Chris, and I've got a different answer to this. I've got an answer to this, rather. I don't know if it's different because I don't know what your answer is. I'm not a mind reader.
I was going to say, how do you know what I'm going to say?
Yeah, I don't know what you're going to say.
Second guess your answer and just try and make it different.
Would Joe Taylor be the right loan signing now? Profile player. Even though we know he's not going to be, but would he be? Because I'll tell you what.
Okay, I won't answer the question.
I'll go first. So you go first. Go on, you go first. I'll step aside.
Well, I'm going to link this to the Sam Clucas thing you said in regard to you want some good news in the club. You want that feel-good factor. Would he be the right loan signing for that from that perspective? Yes. Would he be the sort of player that we need to finish off the chances that we are creating? We have experienced that ourselves. I would argue we've got that in the squad already in Bailey Cadamarteri. But so on the pitch, no. If he is signed, would I be pleased? Yes, of course I would. I'm not going to pretend I wouldn't. Is he exactly the profile that we need to significantly improve the squad right now? No. So that's kind of one in the no category, one tick in the yes category.
So you're sitting on the fence again.
Would it be good news? Would it be good news overall? Is a good news story to kind of increase the morale in the fan base? Yeah, I suppose there's two yeses there and a no. But the most important one of those is, does he fit the squad right now? And I don't think so. I don't think, or not. It doesn't fix the biggest issues in the squad, I don't think.
Yeah, my answer was no. I think we won't sign the type of player that we need, because what we need, in my opinion, is a Jayden Stockley or a Lee Thorpe or a Matt Reed, because we're going a little bit more direct. So we've got to have a striker that will bully a centre-half, win some of those headed balls so that we can pick it up in the final third, so that a Tom Bayliss or a Ben House can pick it up when it drops in front, or so that a Freddie Draper or a Bailey Cadamarteri or even a Jovan can get in behind from a flick on. We're not winning enough of those. Jovan didn't actually do a terrible job against Piergianni. I mean, Piergianni won 7 of his 8 aerial duels, but he does nearly every week. But when we're going long, we're not winning enough of those duels and we're not picking up enough of the second balls. And I think we need a brute of a centre forward who's going to bully. We're not going to get that, because you don't sign that sort of player in January unless you pay stupid money, which we're not going to do. And we don't want to be lumbered with that type of player going forward, because we may change the way that we play. But right now, the way that we play, we're losing possession too much when we're putting the long balls onto the heads of just big centre halves who mop up all day long.
I don't 100% agree with you.
You don't have to. I'm right, but you don't have to.
Well, the bit I do agree with is an experienced kind of combative centre forward. I don't think we need to win the first contact. You're right in saying that when we do go longer, it doesn't stick, but it doesn't have to stick with us winning a flick on. It has to stick with us being in a position to win the second balls and keep possession of the pitch up there. We're going to touch on Birmingham later, and their biggest strength is as much as they are great in possession, their biggest strength is winning it back out of the pitch because they've got players in the right position. So I think we need an experienced centre forward who's going to be able to help keep us up the pitch for longer. I don't necessarily think that means they have to be a player that's just an immobile, brutish kind of target man. I think we need mobility in our front line. I just think we need someone with a bit of experience and nous, and more than anything, someone who just makes good decisions and shows some calmness in the final third. So I agree that the type of player that we need is very, very unlikely to be available for reasonable finance in January. But I don't think we need a Matt Reed, Lee Thorpe, Jayden Stockley type. I just don't think that suits us. But do we need some experience? Yes, I think that would help.
Ego non disparamus, ego sum ius. That's Latin for I'm not arguing because I'm right. I think it's time for us to take. Sorry, I made that up the other day. I wanted a Latin.
You literally made it up.
No, I mean it is actual Latin, but I made up the saying and then put it through Google Translate because I wanted a Latin saying. It was in the Stacey West chat. I can't believe that you missed it. Anyway, there we go. So I think this is a good time to call an advert break. If you are listening at home, if you are watching, we will have a very quick look through the comments. 35 minutes. Brilliant. Right. Quick one from the comments. So we'll go through. I might not put all of them. Steve Barton says, evening, gents. Dean Wagstaff says, intervals. Kate's on board. Evening, both. Hope you're ready. Looking forward to the trademark stat attack from Chris. Kate also said that Oshin's first name, said by an Irish person a few weeks ago, pronounced it O'Shane. But I heard Oshin from who's Sawaris Ronan was doing it on a chat show. John Booth says if Zach plays, he won't be able to go back out on loan again unless it's the South End, which is exactly what happened with Jonathan Margetts, wasn't it? When they signed him, when Scunny signed him from us. And then he says, evening all. Joe Merrill, are we ready for the cup game this weekend? Born ready, John. Born ready. David Ward, who do we think will be picked as keeper? Go on then, Chris, quickly. You can't sit on the fence. Who do you think will pick at the weekend? I think G Cook. But Steve Barton says already covered that, David. All right, Steve. He says one question I always wonder is how many loan spells players need before they start challenging for a first team spot. As many as it takes.
I think it's different from player to player, and different players progress at different rates. Like Harry Kane is a prime example of that, isn't it? Had loads of loans at lower down, not even particularly successful loans, but then turned into the player that he did. Some players need one loan and smash it after that. Some need more. I think it depends on the individual.
Steve Barton says, surprised we haven't got close links with Forest due to proximity. They must want to send players out on loan. And then Kate says, I think the club are reluctant to deal with Forest again after what they did to us with Tyler a few years back. I mean, they did loan us Liam Bridcut after that, and then I think we got quite a good deal on it. But whether that's the case, I don't know. Uwe says, how many players have we sent on loan to other teams in our league? Can't think of any.
Good question.
Well, in recent years, I can't think of any. Obviously, there was Kyle Perry that we sent on loan to Telford when we were in the National League.
Kieran Toner, Marcus Richardson situation.
Yeah, that was
obviously a bit different. That wasn't the development, was it?
Good shouts. I mean, I'm sure when it was short-term loans, there was a few that we sent out on loan as well. So yeah, good question. And Steve Barton says
Liam Hearn.
Yes,
that was odd situation, wasn't it?
So John Nolan as well. John Nolan went out and actually scored goals, didn't he? And Steve Barton says it's Tom Hopper we need to sign, basically. Get him on the phone. Tom Hopper, George Grant coming back. Right. Oh, my big screen's just gone off and I don't know why. That's frustrating. I now don't have anything to do any research with at all. Not I need it. Kate says Jamie Hand went on loan to Chester as well. Best place for him, if I remember correctly. Utter shite. Right, we will come back in on 38 minutes because that makes it nice and easy for me to edit, given that we have the Fantasy League one to do as well. What we got coming up, Birmingham preview. That's about it, really, isn't it?
Indeed.
Hello and welcome back to episode 300 and whatever it is of the Stacey West podcast. We have banged on about players potentially coming in and out for 35 long minutes. You've now been adverted up, and that will hopefully pay for us to go to Modley again next Christmas and maybe put some money into a charitable event, of which we will discuss a little bit more later on. But we are now casting our eyes forward to Saturday morning, which is not something we should be saying, but we are saying increasingly over the last few months. This time it's Birmingham City in the FA Cup. You can't watch it unless you're going to Birmingham. 1,125 supporters, I believe, are going to Birmingham. I am not going to Birmingham, so I will not be able to watch the game. Whether I will listen or not is actually debatable, because I've got a huge long run to do. I may have it on my phone while I'm doing my run. Birmingham City in the FA Cup, I did say that it wasn't a terrible draw. It's not a terrible draw, but it wasn't a particularly good draw. Chris, are you going to tell us that we can win the game?
Not really.
No, okay. Well, that's good. Should we just move on then? Jesus Christ.
I'm gonna give us an indication as to how I think we can win. Honestly, what I've written on my notes here is, can we win? How can we win? ? First thing I've written down before exploring further was with great difficulty.
Brilliant. Yep.
So we shall see. It's going to be a tough game, but there is some light at the end of the tunnel here. But I also I think one of the saving graces, or potential saving graces, is that Birmingham are very likely to significantly change their starting lineup. The downside of that is they're going to potentially change it to players like Mark Leonard, who was arguably the best midfielder in League One last season. Lucas Djukovic, pretty much played his whole career in the Championship. Lyndon Dykes, Scottish international. Ethan Laird, etc. So, yeah, their second string is still probably capable of winning League One, but they're probably not going to quite have the same connection on the pitch and understanding as the players that are playing more regularly. So I suppose there's an element there, but I'm guessing you don't want me to talk for 5 minutes specifically on how good Birmingham are and how we can win. There's probably a little bit of discussion around this first.
Was there more discussion do you want me to have?
You normally say you don't want me talking for too much in one go.
Chris, I don't mind that when I haven't done any research on it because I've been busy all afternoon, to be honest. Do you know what? I think, if I'm brutally honest, I think it's a harder draw than getting half of the Championship clubs away, because I think if you get a Preston away or an Oxford or a Plymouth, they're focused on Championship survival. They're likely to change the team. They don't have squads that are as good as Birmingham's. Like Plymouth's squad isn't as good as Birmingham's. Oxford's isn't as good as Birmingham's. Preston isn't. There's a lot of teams down the bottom there that isn't. Birmingham City have got, in my opinion, a top 10 Championship squad. The players that you're mentioning there would walk into almost any team in the bottom half of the Championship without a doubt. So it's a tougher game. Yeah. It's a tougher game. And look, the only reason that this isn't a cup tie that we're going, I'm really looking forward to this, is because we've got them in the league as well. If Birmingham weren't in our league, this would be, well, we're going to this big ground. It's this big club. It's really exciting. It's better than Ipswich in the third round, however many years ago. It's a better draw than that because they're a bigger club than Ipswich. But because they're in the same league as us, and because we played really well against them and still got beat 3-1 earlier in the season, I just find it is what it is. I get quite ambivalent about the FA Cup at times. When we had Everton in the FA Cup third round, I didn't get excited until I got to Goodison, and I just think, I don't know. I just think if we were to take anything from the game at all, it would be a huge kind of positive. But I just don't see it. And as Kate said, and I think it was, I can't remember who it was now who said it. Said on Twitter, drawing Birmingham was like getting HR in the Secret Santa, and it absolutely was. It's going to kill me now.
Watching the draw live, because it was on BBC One, I think, and I just happened to kind of be able to watch it live, and there's loads of big names like still in the draw, and then one by one two of them went straight away, but then one by one they went, and then it was like typical. At the time for me, I appreciate your article the next day was trying to say it's not a terrible draw. I thought it was at the time because it's a game we're likely going to lose that isn't a massive money spinner for us. So yeah, it felt a little bit depressing at the time. Now I will talk a little bit about them. Like we have obviously prepped this and previewed this in the way that we would any other game. I suppose it is always a little bit more difficult to prep and preview a cup game because there are likely to be a lot more changes. But it's FA Cup third round, so both teams are going to take it reasonably seriously. I'd imagine if you can measure seriousness, we would probably take it more seriously than they will. I don't think the FA Cup is going to be a massive priority for Birmingham City this season. All they really want to do, I imagine, is get out of League One. And I think Ipswich is a massive kind of example to them of what they've done, been able to go back-to-back promotions into the Premier League. I think that is what Birmingham are hoping to do. FA Cup, I don't think, takes a huge amount of priority here. But as we mentioned, the players they are likely to have on the pitch are still going to be strong. But in the league, I think everyone knows that they are runaway leaders in regards to a lot of stats. They're obviously leaders in the league now after Wickham just faltering a little bit after a ridiculously good run. But Birmingham, from seeing every team, of course, that the Imps have played this season, Birmingham have been by far the best footballing side by an absolute country mile that I've seen at Sincil Bank this season and in any away game. 67.6% average possession, by far and ahead the highest in League One. We know that doesn't count for a huge amount, but Birmingham do quite a lot with their possession. Fifth for XG, but scored the most goals. Best defence and best XG against. They're the best team in terms of keeping teams out. They score a lot of chances. When you see a team that's overperforming their expected goals, you sometimes think, well, is it going to last? When you've got players that are higher quality than the level, that's a sign of a good player. They outperform their expectations for the level, so that's all good. second for touching the box, like all the metrics that you really would want to measure to gauge are they a good team or not. They're brilliant. They're absolutely fantastic. Now, I think a lot has been said, and a lot is to get from the just a sheer ability, individual ability they have of their individual players. We saw that firsthand at Sincil Bank. For me, Birmingham's biggest strength, though, is their organisation in and out of possession. So having that amount of possession can be a really, really effective defensive tactic as well. Because I suppose it makes sense from a simple perspective of saying, well, if we've got the ball, the opposition can't score. But of course, it's quite risky to have the ball in like deeper areas, isn't it, at times? But I think Birmingham have a lot of short passes with players in quite close proximity to each other. When what that means is, and I think this is their biggest strength, what that means is when they do lose the ball, they've got lots of players around the ball to win it back immediately, and their counter press is brilliant, their rest defense is brilliant, and they pounce on teams. And what that means is they could just camp in opposition's thirds. And I shared a little graphic with you earlier. I think I mentioned these graphics before from what website is it? theanalyst.com, which shows basically areas of dominance. So which part of the pitch is this particular team strong in compared to its opponents? Birmingham dominate almost every single zone on the pitch compared to their the opposition. So what this means is really they can suffocate teams and they just kind of camp in the opposition third. And sometimes it feels like it's the unstoppable force against the immovable object. But it's just pressure. It's just amount of pressure just builds and builds and builds, and over time chances are created. And as soon as that goal goes in, then games change. So it's going to be tough because they're really good. But how can we win? Because football isn't the most predictable thing in the world. You can have a good idea, but there's always a chance, isn't there? There is always a chance. So a couple of things from me really in how can we win. Obviously, first one was with difficulty, but obviously Birmingham haven't conceded many goals. But of the goals they've conceded, just under half of them are from set plays. If you add set plays and counter-attacks together, that's actually where they concede the majority of their goals rather than from open play. Yes, Kate. Kate's just put in the chat here. In short, what Chris is saying is bugger. And yeah, that reminds me of the very last, one of the very last scene of Blackadder goes forth. I love Blackadder; it's brilliant, isn't it? Captain Darling. Anyway, so set pieces are going to be key. They're not bad at them by any means, but in terms of a percentage of the goals that they've conceded, a reasonable percentage of that does come from set pieces. This is going to sound weird. Birmingham City goal kicks can be attacking opportunities for us. My opinion is we, for want of a better word, go for it, really, in this game. Press super, super, super high. And if Birmingham play through you and score, I'm happy to go hands up. You're a good football team. Well played. But I think that's the only way that we can get anything out of this game is by being super, super, super aggressive out of possession, trying to win the ball back high up the pitch. Don't allow them to have that settled possession in our third and then kind of pin you in and camp in that. So I think we've got to be really aggressive in this. And I think we've just got to kind of throw caution to the wind here and try and play as high up the pitch as we possibly can. I expect us to go a lot more direct in this game. And you know what? Even I'm trying to get in behind, and overhit the ball. If the ball goes out for a Birmingham City goal kick, you know they're going to play short. We can set up for that and try and stop them playing and try and win the ball back high up the pitch where they haven't got as many players around the ball in close proximity. Sounds strange saying Birmingham goal kick could be an attacking opportunity for us, but I think a Birmingham goal kick and a set piece for us is our biggest opportunity to score. We know we're good out of possession generally. So yeah, that's my tactical insight is, for want of a better phrase, fuck it. Give it a good old go. Hope for the best. And I think if we lose the game by being really aggressive and trying to play on the front foot, I think we'll be reasonably satisfied. And then if we take that style and aggression into the league and win the next game, all good from me.
Well, since Christmas Day, we haven't really given it a good old go at anything, have we? So yeah, hopefully 2025 we can. And look, it could be a little pickup. If we do go there and get something, even take the game to penalties or whatever, it just gives you a little bit of a boost. And right now we need that boost desperately. So I'm not going to add any more to that, mainly because I haven't prepped anything, so there's no point. I'm not just going to wing it. But we did decide that we wanted to talk about FA Cup memories. Now, it's really obvious where this conversation normally goes. You say FA Cup memories to a Lincoln City fan, and it's Ipswich, it's Brighton, it's all that sort of stuff. So I'm assuming when I said to you, Chris, FA Cup memories, you have thought outside the box and come up with something that's not 2016-17, because I've actually come up with at least one positive and one negative that's not 2016-17. So what, and anyone who wants to get involved in the comments now, you can, because we'll make it okay for people at home. We'll read them out. FA Cup memories that are not related to the FA Cup run where basically we got to the quarterfinal. So I'll go first with two, good and bad. So one of my best FA Cup memories is my first FA Cup memory, and that was in November 1987. Yes, all the photos of it are in black and white before anybody starts joking. We beat Crewe Alexandra 2-1. It was the opening of the St Andrews stand. I don't know what it's called now. It's the Green Thumb stand or something, isn't it? I don't know. Green Link.
I don't know what it's called anymore.
Stand.
Yeah, that's it.
You know
Green
the one
Link.
I mean. Yeah. So it was the opening of that stand, and it was a real moment of optimism. We've been relegated out of the Football League. We've been playing with three sides to the ground. That was a really good Crewe side, if I remember correctly. John Pemberton played. David Platt played for Crewe that day. They were a 4th division team. We were a non-league team, and we beat them 2-1 at the Bank to set up an away trip to Mansfield. Now, I remember it. I was there. I was Railway End, my little face resting on the little granite wall at the back of the ground. And do you know what? I don't know if it's because it's my first FA Cup memory, because we've won games since. We've very rarely been giant killers since, and there is another one that springs to mind, which I'll pick up on in a second. But that one really, really did grab me. My bad memory, and I don't know if it's a bad memory or not, because we got knocked out, but we were playing, I want to say Dagenham and Redbridge. And I'm sure Kate will remember this because it was around late 90s, early 2000s. Dagenham and Redbridge, I'm sure it was the second round. And I want to say that we'd beaten somebody like Stevenage in the first round, but I might have got my years mixed up. It might have been the year we beat Welling or something like that, or Bracknell. Dagenham and Redbridge, FA Cup second round. We've got a lone player called Matthew Gent in goal. And 89 minutes, and it's 0-0, and Gent has been outstanding. Dagenham have absolutely pumped us from they're in the National League. I seem to think we were the 4th division or whatever it's called. And I remember Alan Long reading out, today's man of the match, Matthew Gent. And as he said it, a shot came in, Gent went down, and it trickled through his legs and into the back of the net in one of the worst goalkeeping howlers I think I've ever actually witnessed live. And it was just, it's almost like a moment of sheer comedy. Gent, I don't think, played for us again. He was later sent to prison for beating up his wife. He's not a particularly, I don't know what he's doing now. If you're listening, Matthew Gent, I'm sure you may have turned your life around. But yeah, there's 2 FA Cup memories. I have one more actually before I don't want to steal from you.
You go. Yours are more interesting than mine. You go first.
Brighton and Hove Albion. I'm sure we played them in the FA Cup first round in about 2004. And I think they were top of the, I want to say they were top of the of whatever League One was at the time. They had Leon Knight playing for them, who scored goals for fun day in, day out. And I think Paul Mayo, Matt Bloomer, and Simon Yeo scored. I think Mayo scored a penalty. Matt Bloomer somehow scored. I don't know. We beat them 3-1 on the day.
3-1, wasn't it? Yeah, I remember that.
And I remember that because I remember I actually went that day with I was living at Outwater Close on Glebe Park, and Pete Nuttin. You know Pete Nuttin. I was mates with him for years at primary school, and I hadn't seen him for years and years. And I think he came round with, might have been Dale or Matty Moore or somebody like that, picked me up. And I remember going out to that game. And again, like the Crewe game, it was Stacey West End of the ground that I watched it from. And it's just, yeah, they were the magic of the cup for me. Before I pull Ashley Robinson's answer in, I will let you now have a go.
Yeah, I tried to be smart and quirky here, and I couldn't be. I couldn't step away from 16-17. Sorry, but there's kind of a personal element to this. So it's not just that we were good and it was brilliant, because it was magical and we were good, but it was my personal experience of it, because I obviously, as everyone here probably knows, played for the club as a youngster, was a season ticket holder, was really into it. it broke my heart getting released. Was away from the club for a little while. Came back under Chris Moyes, fell back in love, and kind of been an ever present ever since. And it's always nice when you were back at the club before the kind of rise again, and it kind of felt like reward, even though I had a hiatus myself. And then that magical season under the Cali was great. And I remember that first game against North Ferriby. I remember the first Tuesday night game where we had a plus 4,000 crowd against, I think it was Solihull. And it's like, there's something happening here. There really is. It just felt like something was brewing. Obviously, we all know where it ended up. But I actually was, through work mainly, was unable to get to the majority of the FA Cup games. So I wasn't able to go to Oldham due to work. So I missed that one. I couldn't go to the Ipswich away game because of work. I queued up for hours to get a ticket for the Ipswich home game, and they sold out when I was about 10, 15 people from the front. So I missed that one. Was working for the Brighton game. And then it got to Burnley. And me and my partner had booked to go away to Manchester the Friday night, weeks and weeks and weeks in advance. It must have been half term because we was in Lincoln the Wednesday before, and I hadn't had the time off work to go and queue up to try and get a ticket for the Burnley game. So obviously it was the year that you had to queue for everything. And Steph said to me, she says, just go and have a look. You might as well go and ask just to see. So I drove to the ground, got to the ground. There wasn't a queue. And after my experience of the Ipswich game, queuing up for ages and not getting a ticket, my thought was, well, if it's not a queue, there's no tickets left. So I almost drove off again. And she goes, are you not going to go and ask? I was like, well, no, there's no queue. There won't be any tickets. She goes, well, you're here now. You might as well go and ask. And I swear this is true. I walked into the ticket office. I said, this is probably a ridiculous question to ask you, but do you have any tickets for the Burnley game? And they said, we've got 2 left. I'll have those 2, please. So we then had a lovely evening away in Manchester on the Friday, drove from Manchester to Burnley on the Saturday. The only other game that Steph had ever been to with me was us at home to, I think it was Bromley. We lost 3-0. It was freezing cold. About 2,000 people were there a couple of years before. Steph came along with me. Obviously, we had a fantastic time, brilliant atmosphere, great day, amazing performance. We scored. Just magical, absolutely magical. And it's the first time she ever saw me cry. We've been together quite a few years at that point, and the first time she'd ever seen me cry was at football. I was a blubbering mess. It all came over me. So yeah, I kind of felt like I missed out of the FA Cup run, and then finally got to experience that kind of magical moment. And it was just, yeah, I can't get away from that as my kind of defining FA Cup memory. So that's mine. Sorry, it wasn't particularly interesting or particularly out the box, but yeah, there's a bit of sentiment to it, if nothing else.
Boring. No, I'm not detracting from your story. Let's have a look. We have got some more. So we've got Ash Robinson, Northwich Victoria versus Lincoln was one of my favourite FA Cup moments. Now I remember that because
that was on TV, wasn't it?
Yeah, we played Telford in the first round, and Johnny Benton says the same. It was an odd place, and we actually won. So we played Telford in the first round. We won, I want to say 3-1 at Telford. I think Chris Fagan scored. Sergio Torres, I think, scored. And the next day, I remember sitting at home on my own in Newtoft watching the FA Cup game, and it was Charlton, Northwich, and Northwich knocked out Charlton, and the draw was straight after it. And I remember thinking, God, you wouldn't want to be away at Northwich, would you? As Northwich came out at home, and then Lincoln. So seriously. And I remember driving. I actually drove over to Northwich Victoria. I think I took Sam Ashu and a couple of other lads over. A very young Sam Ashu. I was poacher. That was the day Andy Priest punched me in the face. Jamie Clark scored, might even have scored 2. And funnily enough, following on from the Matthew Gent story, Jamie Clark is now, I believe, in prison for 15 years for attempted murder, which is, he got involved in some sort of drugs thing in Leeds. But yeah, he scored for us that day as well. And I remember it very well. And on the way out of the car park, we got stuck in traffic, and Gabriel Clark had been at the game. He does the commentary, and Andy Townsend. They came over and actually chatted to us through the car window. So that was a good memory. Another FA Cup memory that I'd omitted was a 0-0 draw with Plymouth Argyle when we were in the National League, and it was my final day game as poacher. And I'll never forget, because they presented me with a picture. Still got it on my wall at half time. And I kind of walked round taking the applause. And I won't ever forget this from Plymouth fans. As I walked past the Plymouth fans, they applauded me as well. And I quite liked that. And so I was quite emotional in the suit then as well. Crying was probably the one thing I hadn't done in the suit. I'd done pretty much every other bodily function, almost every bodily function. If you haven't read that, my book is still available on Amazon for the reasonable price of, I don't know what it's at the minute. So there we go. And Ashley Robinson says, remembers the Plymouth one. And many people, particularly, I think, Jake Newsom, who took over as poacher, will remember the next game because he went down, I believe, as Nick Proctor did, to the replay. And I think we got beat 5-0. I think we was 3-0 down after about 10 minutes. So I wasn't there. So that's it, really. That's FA Cup weekend, done and dusted. There is just one more thing I would like to talk about before we disappear. And that is a super special event, which is on the 24th of January at Tension Twisted Realities, which is on Croft Street in Lincoln. If you're not familiar with Croft Street, that's where all the druggies hang out, outside of the YMCA and outside of that church. But it's the Orange Building. There's escape rooms and bits and bobs there as well. So on the 24th of January, the Stacey West, in conjunction with the Former Players Association, are hosting quite an exciting night, an evening with Graham Bressington and John Schofield. Now, on a personal note, I cannot wait for this, because Graham Bressington is a player who I've wanted to get on a podcast or just do an interview with for 10 years now. Ever since I started the Stacey West, before it, I wanted to talk to Graham Bressington. Finally, I've got him nailed down. We're going to get him on stage with beers. It's not going to be recorded as a podcast. You will not be able to listen back to this. So if you listen to me and Paul Degare when we do Colin Alside, and we've done Simon Yeo, and we've done Phil Neal, and we've got others queued up, Chris Moises is coming on very soon, this won't be on that series. The only way that you can attend is to come along on the night. The tickets are so ridiculously cheap, it's unreal. They're £7.50. For £7.50, you get Intention Twisted Realities. It is upstairs, so if you're a wheelchair user, my sincerest apologies, but we are unable to accommodate people who cannot manage the stairs. But £7.50, you get Graham Bressington, you get John Schofield, you get 60 other Lincoln City fans. Gav Gordon will be there, another former player, Paul Degare, is coming over from Guernsey for it. There will be a raffle. Now, this will be promoted heavily on my site beforehand, because this is where the personal bit comes in. Half of the proceeds from the raffle will be going to my London Marathon effort. I know that we've got a signed shirt, a framed signed shirt from the Former Players Association going into that. I know that we have got a special gin box, which has been donated as well. So a bottle of gin and a load of bits and bobs. So if you join one of those gin clubs, that's been donated. So that's also part of the prize. There'll be a few other bits as well. So yeah, tickets are available now from the Tension Twisted Realities website. You can find details on the Stacey West. It's been promoted by the Former Players Association. It's been promoted by the Trust. And I'll be doing a little bit more over the coming weeks just on who Graham Bressington is. If you don't know, if you are not a man of a certain age as I am, you may not have seen Graham Bressington play football. Graham Bressington was an immense footballer. He was a cult hero. He was just as legendary in the bars of Lincoln as he was on the pitch playing for the Imps. But he's certainly somebody with a lot of stories. As I remember, I mean, I met him at a dinner 15 odd years ago now, maybe a little bit more than that. And he was what can only be described as a witty raconteur. And the more beer he got in him, the better the stories got. So I think he's going to have some great stories. And John Schofield, obviously, Lincoln City player, Lincoln City manager, kind of a legend of the game, not just of Lincoln City. We had him on the live show that we did with Mark Kennedy a couple of years ago. And again, John Schofield was absolutely solid gold. So he's going to be brilliant. We get kicked out at 10:30. The plan is probably then to get into the bird cage and make a little bit of a night of it. It's the night before Peterborough. Everyone gets paid on that Friday. So get your tickets, £7.50. Come on down. Super special Stacey West night.
Good.
There we go.
Sounds good.
Should be. Yeah, should be. Right, so there we go. Episode 348, the Stacey West podcast. We didn't have a game to talk about, but we have still gone over the hour mark. We've talked about players coming in, players going out, players being recalled, Birmingham City in the FA Cup, our FA Cup memories, and that is about it. I've enjoyed the show. It's my second podcast recording today, and there's still another one to go, so it feels a little bit like a podcast marathon, not like a real marathon. I'm running one of those too. Don't forget to sponsor me, or the Imps.
I hope the Imps.